Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, another huge news week of macro news with the Fed cutting rates and Bitcoin reacting really positively at a time when stocks sold off. So plenty to get through today. We do welcome a few hundred new subscribers again this week, plenty of new members to our premium group, and this week I did a detailed explanation on leverage tokens and ETFs and how you should use those and what you need to know before you go head out and just buy these double or triple leveraged tokens. So head over to the members area if you'd like to join us there. On this day in crypto history does return. Follow Nuggets News on Twitter if you are interested on what's been happening throughout the past. I know plenty of you find crypto history very fascinating, as I do. But let's get into the local news here with Queensland high-rise approvals really falling off a cliff. Now, there are signs everywhere that the pain has slowed down, or we might even be recovering, but we're waiting to see the flow-on effects, if construction and approvals and all that continues to fade. But I'm not going to talk about that too much because Martin North and I will do our monthly update this week. The talk of Australia has been the banning of cash payments over $10,000. Now, there are certain nuances, exemptions, and cryptocurrency look to be one of those, but I encourage you to read this article that I shared on Twitter from Hall and Wilcox about how the government can just decide at any point that changes and they are going to include cryptocurrency. So obviously I'm one of the advocates in there trying to bat for you guys and explain this to government. I very much think that this is a positive for cryptocurrency, but cringing on our privacy and our rights, and they're going to continue to lower that and then try and phase out cash altogether, force you into the banking system, and ultimately I believe we are going to negative interest rates. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. There's been some great videos about this week. But as you know, the real laundering comes from the banks and the big corporations, not the government themselves, although maybe we can argue that. But Crown's been in the news, and the regulators again in Australia failed to act. So these are the sort of people we need to be cracking down on, not banning cash. Now, MIT have recently done a lot of research and analysed plenty of Bitcoin transactions and found that only 2% were illicit. Now, that figure has constantly been falling from back in the Silk Road days. So when you hear, Mnuchin coming out and saying that it's only used for the bad stuff, it is just simply not true. Point them to the facts these days. Now, this is the video that John Adams and Martin North did, up to 66,000 views. So watch that if you want more information about everything that's been, unfolding in Australia right before our eyes. Now, a big thanks to our sponsor, New Brighton Capital. You guys know my beliefs in crypto long-term and building your nest egg. They do help you own a number of cryptocurrencies if that's what you want to do in your super. So if you want to take advantage of that free 20-minute consultation on whether or not setting up your self-managed super, your reporting obligations, and we do have that member discount there for all you guys and a bigger discount for our premium guys as well. So head over to New Brighton Capital or the link that we have on our website there. Now, US-China trade talks collapse. This is one of the things that caused the stock market to have a really bad red week at a time when people were predicting rate cuts would be good for the market. So a lot of this leads to this civil unrest, ultimately these tensions in China. So Hong Kong police, the tear gas, these peaceful protests turn chaotic. And these are the sort of things that we're seeing globally. The macro environment, geopolitical environment, it's all changing. And Steve Bannon this week came out and said that crypto is part of this global populist movement. Now, I tend to agree that this is definitely a social movement of people that are a bit more open-minded, people that want to scratch beneath the surface, and people are going to fight for what they believe in. So I just can't believe how this is all playing out, with Libra and Facebook bringing crypto to the forefront of the conversations in Congress. It's crazy to be a part of this movement and to bring you guys the news. Very exciting times. But over to Germany, where their entire yield curve dropped below zero for the first time ever. So whether we're looking, a few months out or 30 years out, that entire German yield curve is now negative. Really crazy stuff for what is meant to be the strongest economy in Europe. And we know that all the signs are that recession may be in the next 12 to 24 months. And Christine Lagarde, that's taking over, is going to be up for a big challenge there, trying to keep the EU together and avoid a nasty recession. Now, I found this article really interesting about this CBGA agreement the central banks in Europe had about not to buy gold and to, basically handshake agreement that there's no need for that. And that agreement is not being renewed. So this could open the way for those European central banks to join China, Russia, all the other central banks that have been buying gold in record amounts. Super interesting little fact. I recommend you read the full story there. Now over to the US, where the Fed cut rates for the first time since the GFC, but the big story was the language that Powell used, saying that this is a one and done. Everything's ticking along really well. This is a mid-cycle adjustment rather than this is the start of a new cutting cycle. And you guys know I've been talking about the market wants lower rates and the promises of more easy money. And that's not what they got. They've been promised that rates are going to be pretty firm here for a while. So that's why the stock market had such a big red week in the end. We know that small businesses are struggling. While the stock market is near those record highs, the number of individual businesses that are near their record highs is very low comparatively. So it's those big giants that are really benefiting. Now, another huge data breach this week, Capital One, tens of millions of users, their data is leaked. Every week we have a story like this where users' data is going to end up on the dark web and being used against them. We just can't trust all these companies with our data. We need a new sort of security measures to do that, and we know that blockchain can help in that regard. Now, this story I reported on last week about Apple recording all the intimate conversations you have, and they're suspending this program. So it's great to see these things get brought to people's attention and then action straight away. But Berkshire Hathaway, we know Warren Buffett's been a huge bull and of a lot of these big stocks, and his cash holdings have actually overtaken Apple. So if you're not aware, these companies hold, over $100 billion in cash. That really is crazy. Think about that. They could buy half of every Bitcoin out there. Now, obviously that would start to push up the price if they tried to, but this just shows you in the scheme of things how small Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies market cap is when we have an individual companies with that much cash just laying around. Now, I've been reporting on these chip sales and smartphones, and this is one of the reasons why Apple has had a tough time lately. If the trade wars heat up and those rare earths that they're going to need, there's so much friction there between the US and China and these two companies that we've been talking about as well. But Apple sales year on year down 18%, and Huawei have jumped ahead of Apple. So a lot of people think that Apple's the largest phone provider in the world, but they're actually not. They've slipped to number 3 now. Another really interesting case has been Beyond Meat, that plant-based meat replacement. And Mike Novogratz said that it reminded him of Bitcoin back in 2017. It's funny to hear him say that because just a day or two before I'd done my video talking about there's so much that crypto traders can learn about this short squeeze, the cost to borrow, how this is playing out with the shares on issue. So I really encourage you to go back and watch that video that I did during the week if you haven't already. Now, I did mention in that plants have consciousness, and that upset a lot of people. So not to the same degree as animals or humans, but if you haven't realized that plants are aware of their surroundings and have a form of consciousness, I recommend watching some of the great TED Talks that are out there. But into the crypto news, and it was great to see ADCA and Blockchain Australia, who have recently merged. We've become one industry body. I'm a board member there and making the news on CoinDesk. So hopefully plenty of great stuff, and we'll continue the good fight for blockchain adoption in Australia. Now, similar line of thought here, South Korea has declared a partial, regulation-free zone for crypto companies. Now, obviously, they were one of the countries that really cracked down on crypto, and you guys know my saying that one by one, everyone is going to get that FOMO, that jealousy. We see little cities like Zug in Switzerland, have become these havens for innovation, money, the smartest minds, and that is what is going to continue to happen. And the ones that regulate out are going to be left behind. Now, a cool little project, Zilliqa. I haven't spoken about this one a lot on the channel, but a high throughput blockchain has found another good use case here with advertising. So that bit of a trial run here with Mindshare PepsiCo went really well, and they're now pushing down that avenue. So what we're starting to see is blockchains for individual use in the real world, picking their niches. This is really exciting to see. Another great one in the advertising space is Brave. I've got my hoodie on today. I regularly use this browser. I love it. It saves me so much time. And Basic Attention Token have added this tipping function directly into Twitter now. And we do have a few of you that support the channel there, being able to go to the content creator directly, because what YouTube pays out is an absolute pittance compared to the money they make. Now, in terms of being able to reward content creators directly, SpakeChain has a funny name and people laugh at it, but if you dig a bit deeper, this is a great project, and adult entertainment is one of the industries that struggles to get banked, and they're working on second layer solutions, payment channels to be able to pay content creators directly, cut out all the fees, give them that financial independence. So really great to see that, a cool little project if you haven't checked that one out already. Now, in terms of content creators and gaming, I really think the industry is changing. And a 16-year-old who is good at gaming, now not quite content creating, but all these guys stream, they're on Twitch, so many viewers, and it's not surprising that $3 million, this is more than the winner of Wimbledon. So crazy stuff for a 16-year-old, but this is where the gaming space is heading. I did Gaming Week recently. There's just so much money that is going to flood into this space. So very exciting. Well done to that young gentleman. Now, similar line of thinking here with the NBA partnering up here with the Krypto Kitties creator. So Krypto Kitties, if you don't know, were collectible cats on Ethereum. You could breed them and then sell the offspring. Now these were selling for $50,000 or $60,000. And I know for some people it's really hard to grasp this concept of a digital collectible, but we're seeing the NBA, the big boys, they're getting into this and experimenting. They know that the target demographic is changing. They can put out that app. People are going to spend a lot of time on it these days. So great to see some movers and shakers there, and Everton Football Club also signing a deal with eToro. Now in Australia, I'm sure you guys have noticed as well, every game of Aussie Rules football we watch, eToro there in the background in the ads. So the target market, it's just this next wave of adoption that is starting to unfold before our eyes when people want to see Bitcoin going up in price and they want to buy it, and eToro is right in front of them every night on mainstream TV. This is definitely how I see it playing out going forward. Now, another great mainstream adoption use case are these Nexo debit cards. So there's half a dozen cards out there now that will let you spend your crypto, or in this case, spend against your crypto. So what this does is allow you to basically use it as a credit card with your crypto in the background. So I believe this allows Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Bitcoin Cash. But if similar to a make or die that loan that you can borrow, and these cards are going to come out in a decentralized fashion soon. So when you spend it, if your Bitcoin goes up, that pays off your debt. Very cool stuff. As I said, I'm interested to watch this one come out in a fully decentralized fashion, a make or die style card. Now, last week I reported on the Ycash hard fork, splitting away from Zcash to give their founders more of the block reward to fund development. And it was a friendly hard fork, but only a week later we see Zuko himself coming out and saying that, hey, we want to extend that developer fund because this is coded in to end after 4 years, which is coming up in 2020. So they need to increase that. They're going to run out of funds to keep developing Zcash and that technology. They can't expect the developers to work for free. We know how hard it is to attract good developers. Now, Bitmain lost $625 million in 2 months, but I know they're thinking about doing an IPO. They've made a lot of wrong moves, and this shows you how even some of the biggest boys in the crypto space can lose a lot of money. They really backed Bitcoin Cash there, and Bitcoin Cash has been lagging, a lot in price compared to Bitcoin. There's a lot more competition now for ASICs and all the mining they do. So again, I'm interested to watch how this story unfolds, if they're going to do an IPO, what that will be valued at, and whether or not they've had their time in the sun and made their money and they're never going to be back in the glory days again. Now, speaking of Bitcoin Cash, a judge has kicked out this case, Craig Wright attacking Roger Ver. So it seems every week he's in the court, in the headlines, but he's dropped that case against Roger Ver for now. Now, Bitcoin Satoshi's vision hasn't had the greatest week either. We've seen that one of the large blocks here, 210 megabyte block. Remember, Bitcoin only has 1 megabyte blocks. So what this does is when those blocks have to propagate around the network, around the globe, if you don't have good bandwidth and the latency, all these things that come into it, this is one of the reasons why it looks like the chain, there's 3 chains currently being mined. It's not in sync. So I'm going to be interested to watch how this unfolds, what the BSV community say about this. They normally give me and everyone a hard time, so maybe they'll be in the comments below letting us know what's happened here. But these are the risk you take when you have experimenting and pushing the boundaries and lower nodes, all that sort of thing. Now, Coinbase and custody itself has been one of the keys that I'm looking for the next wave of adoption, as well as insurance. And Grayscale, who are the largest investment company in the crypto space, they've got billions of dollars of assets. They actually moved all those into Coinbase custody for storage. Now, Coinbase have continued to allow people to stake, and there's going to be more of those coins coming on board. A real competition there with Binance about who's giving out the most staking rewards, and I'll do an episode on that soon and talk about what I believe are the best coins to stake, and it's not necessarily about what has the highest yield. Now, in the stablecoin war, Walmart's got a little bit of FOMO here and plan to launch their own coin. Every week I seem to be saying that every bank and corporation are going to launch their own stablecoin. They can do this for next to no cost, and we know that blockchain has a great use case for payments. But in terms of keeping an eye on all of this, the US regulators announced this week that they're going to run nodes or keep an eye on node. They might outsource the actual running of it, but they want to be keeping a direct eye on these public ledgers. So I know the Ripple community was super excited about this, but it is a wider range of coins. I'm sure they're going to be keeping an eye and keeping their own full node of many of the mainstream blockchains going forward. Now, good news for Ripple holders, XRP holders, I should say. I've been pretty critical because I believe that all these banks and corporations are going to launch their own coins. Now, the XRP community tell me that XRP is the settlement layer and the pool, and it's going to tie all these together. I'm going to have an XRP expert on soon to have a bit of a friendly debate about how this is going to play out. But MoneyGram reporting that they are going to be using XRapid and XRP for cross-border settlements. That's definitely a step in the right direction for XRP holders. Now, I believe that Tether it's still, over-dramatized, all these situations and what's playing out. Chinese investors buying up to 30 million a day between Russia. The fact is that these stablecoins are a great way to pay already. Very low cost. We have Tether on Tron and Ethereum now, as well as Omni. So it's very low fees. And I know people think that Tether is losing market share, it's a scam, it's not backed, but I actually think that this is going to continue to be really important to the crypto ecosystem going forward. Now, in terms of the number of payments made with stablecoins, we've now passed Venmo. Most of you guys know Venmo, particularly overseas, but this is the first time that this has happened, Q2 2019. So Tether, the vast majority there, USD Coin, DAI, Paxos, and True USD. So this is an exact example of what we're talking about with cross-border payments being very easy and possible with all these stable coins and already overtaking Venmo. And I'm sure you guys have seen all those Western Union ads popping up and banks trying to get really competitive, but crypto is still a better option. Now, Square's Q2 Bitcoin revenue has doubled from their previous record. So this is a very popular ad, not so much in Australia, but in the US, they've made it so easy. There are so many new on-ramps. Remember in the last bull run when it took you 2 weeks to get verified on an exchange? These days, there are going to be so many ways to download an app, even if it's just your first payment or little payments. The on-ramps and the number of companies, it's just going to be crazy. I do believe we're going to see another big cycle going forward. Now, the CFTC didn't approve Ledger X, although they tweeted that they were going to start these physically settled Bitcoin futures. Everyone got pretty excited, but they were of the opinion that they had waited that 180 days that's required and hadn't heard anything. So by default, they'd been approved. But the CFTC came out and said, well, no, guys, that's not the case. You haven't got approval yet, even though we have seen other companies get that approval. Now, every week it seems like back to saying that they're going to be launching soon, but very near future they've been told. Maybe they're going to approve Ledger X, Backed, a few others all at once, but this is just another one of those catalysts, as well as that ETF somewhere in the distant future. They're all chasing those Bitcoins that are getting fewer and fewer in number now that 85% have all been mined. Now, this figure maybe surprises a lot of people. They think of Bitcoin as this new asset and mining, and more Bitcoins are always coming into supply, but people don't conceptualize this well in terms of the percentage and the aggressive growth we've seen in Bitcoin, the number of people. We might continue on that trajectory, but at the same time, those number of Bitcoins for those new people to chase, there might be 10 times as many people coming, but this time there's even less new Bitcoins in circulation. We know the number of Bitcoins being hodled for over 5 years is at its highest ever number. So many people very bullish for the medium to long term on crypto. We'll talk about price in just a second, but we're very close now, heading into this period. I recorded this video way back in January. Now, Litecoin played out absolutely perfectly in that the halving maybe hasn't been as glorious as everyone would wanted, but remember, Litecoin went from $20 to almost $150. So it's probably lost its shine a little bit in the short term as the spotlight turns elsewhere, but I still think Litecoin is going to grow going forward. But it's all eyes on Bitcoin and that halving that is approaching. And really, we're at this period now. We're over halfway through 2019, where my cycle bracket, I believe this push up is really in full motion. And I'll talk about price action in just a second. Now, one of the things we've been watching this week is our cycle brackets and the volume. So I'm currently using Binance because I believe the volume is better there for short-term trading. And this is the falling wedge that we're watching play out on generally declining volume. And I've been talking about this a lot for members and wanting to see some increased volume when we have broken out of that. So that's all well and good. If we zoom right in here, we are now approaching this area that should act as resistance. The daily closes, the wicks here. We've had a great run off the lows and we were overbought on a number of timeframes. So look, I was only looking for a pullback on these lower timeframes, to be completely honest, when we approach this zone, and we have got that today. We're currently sitting back in the moving averages, but it all looks pretty healthy to me. Ideally, we would have liked to see this volume a little bit more aggressive with the buyers stepping in, but there's plenty of good stuff happening. Now, I did a detailed video about this Adam and Eve pattern that helped us, it ended up being the bottom back in January for Bitcoin, but this pattern played out again perfectly. And I brought that to the attention of our members at the start of this week, where we have that V-shaped bottom and then the rounded bottom. And everyone was calling for 8,000, 7,000. When everyone's expecting something, it often doesn't happen. So look, we got in here and broke the downtrend. That's been a great swing trade, day trade. I know we've got a number of different styles, the guys that like to trade in our group. So I'm not getting too excited that we're going to continue just yet because of that low volume. The more we chop around, the stronger the base we are building for the next leg higher. But look, it's good to see Bitcoin heading in the right direction again, guys. I really think that we're not going to head straight to those new highs straight away, but let's take it one day at a time. I will give you guys daily updates. And if you do want to join our members area, head over to nuggetsnews.com.au to join over 1,000 of us that are taking this crypto journey together. So I hope you guys have enjoyed that. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.